How's everyone doing? I haven't made a video in, well, a very long time. And I've got allergy, so I have this throat thing. Anyways, I picked up the VIVE Pro 2, and I have the G2, HP G2, and I figured I would do a video because I'm almost positive there are other people that are in the same predicament as me. Now, I saw all the videos, all the reviews from all the different YouTubers, and even before I ordered the VIVE Pro 2, so I kind of had an idea what I was getting into. Now, I take other people's reviews, with a grain of salt. Being VR, people's heads are different, their eyes are different, so it's going to be a different experience for everybody. And I knew this. I've been in VR since the beginning of VR. The first development, Oculus, CV, the CV1, the Rift, the Vive, all the Oculus Quests, the G2, and now the VIVE Pro 2. So I've been in the VR realm for a long time. So I had to, I wanted to upgrade, and it's a tough decision on what I'm going to do. And what I did is I wrote the pros and cons on my, hold on. All right, so I wrote the pros and cons down on the difference of these headsets. And there's some benefits and there's some downfalls. This is my experience. So I came from the one that I had before both of these. I had a Quest 2. Quest 2 to the HP G2, light years away. Like not even, I can't go back to the Quest 2. Honestly, can't go back. Once you go HP, you don't go back. High-res VR is awesome. Games that I've been playing that thought were great on the Quest 2, completely terrible once you put something more of a professional headset on. But they are different. The Quest 2 is not really meant to compete. I mean, Quest 2 is great. You put it on your head, you can do everything, you don't need a computer. There's benefits to that. But I never used it outside of where I am now, so it made sense for me to make the move to something like a G2. Now the G2, the clarity is crazy, just absolutely bonkers. It's like the change from standard definition TV to HD. If you remember that change, it was drastic. Like you could clearly see it. That's what it's like from the Quest 2 to the G2. So, the much clearer, higher resolution, and it wasn't too bad. The price was pretty solid. And the cons, though, of the G2 was the tracking. Now, facial head tracking worked fine. Turn your head, everything just worked. But with the controllers, I like to play Population 1. So you where are these things? You got these things and you go to reload. I'm surprised these things didn't break because I'd go to reload, I'd smack them together. These are kind of a little awkward shaped. They feel nice in the hand, but I kept on finding myself hitting the controllers when doing games like that. And also, as soon as it loses the vision of your headset, they just kind of fly away. And that drove me nuts. Like I'll be in Population 1, I would go do something, and then my arm would fly away somewhere else into a tree, and I'd be like, oh. So week 1, these were gone. Literally, I used these for about a week, and that was it. After that, there's a couple of YouTube videos on using the knuckles. These are the index knuckles with the base stations that I have up here, and you need these Bluetooth adapter. I think they're Bluetooth. Honestly, I'm not even sure if they're Bluetooth. There's some sort of radio frequency that they work with these. Really expensive, but you do get the best of both worlds. Super high definition, really good tracking with these. You can go anywhere. I mean, these things have individual finger sensitivity, so it mimics it in certain games that are compatible with this. Really good. really, it took a little bit to get used to them, but after you get used to them, they're fantastic. But to make them work with the G2, you need a lot of things, right? You need the base stations. You need these things. These, base stations are about $100 a piece, $120 a piece. These are like $300, $250, $300 for the set. These little adapter things, I think, were like $65, $75 each. So it starts to add up. And then once you get it all dialed in, you need multiple pieces of software to actually get it dialed in. And then once you get it dialed in, it's not always 100%. Eventually at some point you have to recalibrate your hands with the other joysticks and make it all sync and work nicely. You probably do that kind of often. You also have the issue with within Steam, you have to do like the room setup constantly comes up. It's a bug. You can just exit it out of it and it goes away. But just one little nuance that's kind of a pain. Something else that I just recently learned when I got the VIVE Pro 2 is that you can actually turn these base stations off. I just usually just leave them on, but when you got the VIVE Pro 2, it actually turns the little spinning wheel off. Definitely saving the life of these things, which is great. So it didn't do that with doing this little Frankenstein setup. And there was something else I was going to say. I can't remember what else there was something else that I was going to say, but I'm drawing a blank because I'm just doing this off the top of my head. But so there's those nuances that really started was a little bit more cumbersome than I wanted to be. Oh, I remember now. The other thing that caused issues with the G2 and the knuckles and doing that Frankenstein setup is sometimes you had gray screen issues. So I fixed it while loading, but if I'm a sim guy, so I like to drive around. If I had the headset on and not one of these on and this thing's fall asleep, it'd just be a gray screen. I have learned that I have to turn one of these on, keep it kind of close to me, turn the headset on, and then recenter it. It will eventually work. But it was just such a pain in the butt racing, doing sim stuff with this setup with these controllers. I think it probably would work fine with just the standard, the OEM HP. These guys here, it'd probably be fine. But I wanted these. So, VIVE Pro 2. This, I'm thinking, is going to alleviate all the cumbersome problems that I was having with the G2, which is what I just said. So, let me load this up. So, let's talk about the pros of the Pro 2 here. Wider field of view. I mean, this thing gets really wide. It's like this. I know you can't understand what this means, but this is, the Pro 2, and then this would be something like the G2. So there's a big difference. The stock cushion that comes with the VIVE Pro 2 is a little thick, and it's hot. There is an aftermarket one that you can get. It's a little bit thinner, increases that field of view, and actually is not as hot to use. So that is a good modification. But yeah, larger field of view, which is massive. Higher res screen, I personally can't really tell. I mean, zero screen door effect on both of them. But maybe a little bit less screen door effect, but not as sharp. We'll get there though. And higher FPS. So the higher FPS on the VIVE Pro 2, 120. Another thing, it's like, 90 works fine. It's kind of hard to see 90. The difference between 90 and 120, maybe it's just me. I'm not sure. I'm running, 10700K with a 3080, I forget. It's overclocked. Everything's a little bit overclocked. It runs at all those settings very well. I couldn't really tell the difference between 120 and 90, so I'm not sure if that's a pro or a con. I think it's a pro, But the cons of this device is, and this is the VIVE Pro 2, is God rays. If you're not familiar with what God rays is, it's when it's a really contrasty scene. For example, if you had a black background with some white lettering, it creates like this little halo effect. That's a good term, halo effect. Maybe that's what it's supposed to be called, but a halo effect. And it's only in certain scenes. And what I was doing is when I was trying to decide, I sat in the seat, like put the thing on, switched back and forth between the two, trying to really narrow what I'm going to do. I just stayed in the Vive, like the lobby, where you could, like just a generic Steam lobby, and just looked around. Now there's a lot of letters and stuff, and it's kind of a sort of a contrasty scene with letters. Letters is where I really see the God rays, but when I was sitting there, I could see this, so I'm like, well, let's see what it's like during gameplay, because it's a big deal. So I jumped into some games, Population 1. The main menu, like when you're in the lobby, kind of waiting to get into the lobby. God rays, you can see it, it's distracting, but when you're actually in the game, it's not so bad. Things are moving, it's happening quick. It's not as distracting as just sitting there static and like kind of looking for the God rays, if that makes sense. So the God rays kind of like went away. One of the things that I did end up noticing is that sweet spot that everyone's been talking about. With the stock foam pad that's with it, that sweet spot's further away from your eye. So it's like this, let's say this is the sweet spot, and the further away from it is, it's harder to get that sweet spot. But if you're a little bit closer, that sweet spot's just a little bit easier to get. I was on Facebook and someone's like, oh, you should do this. And I'm like, okay, let me see what this is about. And yes, thinner pad makes that sweet spot a little bit better, and a little bit wider field of view. But it's still not as crisp. There's still, it's okay, but when I was playing Population 1 with the G2, I could see across the map. I mean, I could shoot a booger out of someone's nose with an op, no problem. Actually, I'm terrible with the op, but I can see it. I can see it from across the map. But with the Vive Pro 2, you can see it if you're kind of like looking for it. If you really focus on that one spot. With the G2, I can just kind of like move around my eyeballs and everything is just in focus. So that is it's kind of an inconvenience, and I think I can live with that. With having that issue. The other part of the headset originally was, this thing is hot. I mean, it's like putting on earmuffs with, when this pad was on, with like a winter hat. I mean, and then the stock foam pad, it's so hot. I mean, I was dying. I'm kind of a warm person anyways, and I'm in the basement. It's pretty cool down here, but this thing can warm you up very quickly, and I'm not a huge fan of that. But with a different face mask, and temporarily I just ripped this thing off the back, which is the part that fits in the back of this thing. It actually was much better. I wasn't as hot wearing everything with the stock setup. My guess, there'll be a different, they make the original, like what they call it, the advanced strap or whatever. It may be better than this, a little bit cooler. I'm not really sure. Eventually there'll be 3D prints to do stuff. It'll eventually come out. I'm thinking I have a 3D printer. I'll probably print something to make this a little bit more, what's the word I'm thinking of? I was going to say aerodynamic, but that is clearly not the word. More ventilation, I guess. Definitely not aerodynamic. So those are the pros and cons of these two. I think in the end, what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to keep the Vive Pro 2. I know I'm still not 100, like my gut's saying, oh, I don't know. But I have thought about this like this. I've been thinking about this all day at work. I stayed up to midnight last night, really figuring out what outweighs what. And I feel, the pros of the Vive Pro 2 outweigh the cons. Wider field of view, higher res screen, even though I don't really quite see it. I think maybe later on as games get more adapted and that sort of deal is probably good. Ease of use, really, that is really the meat and potatoes of why I'm switching, is because of the ease of use. Everything just works together. I don't need dongles. I don't need any special software. I don't have to recalibrate the joystick or the controllers. I don't have to do any of that, and everything just works, which I like. it does have software. The Vive does have its own software, but it's native. It's made for it. It works. Everything works. And that's really why I wanted this, was for the ease of use. I can deal with the slight God raises and scenes and such. Yeah, so those are my thoughts. I know there are people that have the G2 and been thinking about the Vive Pro 2. You know what that was? That was eBay sending me a notification for an index, Valve index, from like 7 months ago when I was interested. And honestly, I have no idea how to stop that. You know, tell me all the new listings of the Valve index, which is kind of funny. Yeah, so if you're thinking about making this switch, those are my thoughts. I would suggest, if you do it, remove the stock face shield, bring that a little bit closer, increase the field of view, better sweet spot, yeah, just the ease of use. It's great. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. What are you doing? Are you keeping the G2, Vive Pro 2? Talk me out of the Vive Pro 2. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe there's, you do something and the thing just blows up in your head. I don't know. I'm interested to know what you guys are doing, because I have been scouring Reddit and Facebook and listening to both sides of the story, and well, that's what I came up with. So anyways, yeah, this is a little bit different and quick. So have a good night.